former Shocker Ron Baker joining us here in studio. Ron, thanks for dropping by. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well, Shane. Thank you for having me. I'd like to say that your studio here, Wind Surge, treating you well. It's beautiful. I do enjoy the Dean Wade, representing small town Kansas over there.
That's right.
Beautiful jersey. Yours as well on the wall.
Thank you.
Don't see a 31, but maybe we can solve that down the road.
Well, you did make our collage back there. You've been up there from the moment we opened this place, so
that's nice.
No jersey, but
there's some good names.
Yeah,
her face is up there. Yeah,
Ron's back there. Ochai, Bill Self, Bill Snyder. It's kind of a wall of fame. All right, so the main idea here, of course, is to take a walk down memory lane and talk in particular about the NCAA tournament run. But before we do that, I thought it was interesting that you, off air just a little bit ago, talked about and kind of alluded to as we get older, the memories get a little fuzzier. Your recollection of the 2012-2013 team going into it, if you can take us back to your redshirt freshman season, you guys were picked to finish fourth, actually. You guys were the defending champions, but 5 of your top 6 scorers graduated, moved on from the year before. So if you can recall 19-year-old Ron, what did you think about the 12-13 season before it started?
I wouldn't have guessed fourth. I would have guessed lower than that. So that was a interesting fact. First thing that comes to mind is obviously a lot of new faces as far as playing minutes. I think Demetric Williams was the only guy from the previous year coming back, a great two-way player. Everybody was kind of looking at, him as a role model, especially myself playing the same position as him. Then you had Malcolm Armstead, who also redshirted with me the previous year. And then you had Evan Wessel, and then Sakale Cotton played a little bit that season before. But then also you had Carl Hall. So we had, I'd love to say we had the talent. We just didn't have those minutes that convert into confidence and being on the floor together. We had a great summer, I recall, that year. And honestly, we just loved competing. I felt like we had about 8 to 9 guys that were ready to compete. And I also tell people, I believe we had one of the best junior college recruiting classes coming into that year. Obviously, Clee Anthony, Nick Wiggins, and then C.J. LaFille, who played at Coffeyville here in Kansas. So a lot of great faces coming in and a lot to look forward to, but just not a lot of minutes together.
Do you recall what sort of fuel that Greg Marshall added to that fire? Did he remind you about, hey, we won this last year and this is what they think of you this year?
So one thing he did remind us is, I mentioned Malcolm, Evan, Takel, and I. We were on the scout team the year before. So we were competing against 5 seniors above us each and every day. And him and Chris Jans always fed that, especially to us for, like, hey, you guys have been competing against some of the best players in our league the season before. So, like, let's go into this year confident. And that was kind of the motivation. And, again, had a great summer. We're really looking forward to adding Clee Anthony and Nick and CJ and kind of just off to the races.
Yeah, you beat North Carolina Central to begin with, and then you go immediately to VCU. Was that part of a bracket buster?
I believe that was a return bracket buster game. I think I was would have been probably a junior, if not senior, in high school when they played VCU at home. And usually those return games were 2 years apart. So, yeah, man, talk about a hostile environment.
Big shot by Malcolm Armstead, if I recall, at the end of that game.
2 juggernaut defensive teams. We actually played them the year prior, my redshirt year, in Portland in the NCAA tournament. They returned a lot of their guys, which we didn't. So definitely going to that place, underdog. I tell people this as well, like VCU's crowd, I'd say that place hold 5,000 to 6,000 people, but black and white everywhere. Kind of reminded me of Coke Arena, or at least the closest thing to it. Couldn't hear yourself. Another great memory about that is that was originally Carl Hall's first commit, and there was a lot of slandering going on towards Mr. Carl that game, and he responded well. And truth be told, we snuck out of there with the wind, and it was very well deserving.
Talking to Ron Baker here in studio, talking about the 2012-2013 Wichita State team. Okay, you guys start 9-0, and after you beat Air Force to get to 8-0, you guys are ranked. You're in the top 25. How big a deal was that for you guys?
Personally, I thought it was incredible. I've watched college basketball my entire life, and to be on a top 25 team was an accomplishment in itself. I know a lot of the guys were excited about that. But we also knew we were 9-0 and or 8-0, 9-0, whatever it was going into Tennessee. We knew it was going to be a pretty challenging opponent. Every team in the SEC, maybe besides a few teams, were very competitive. And honestly, it was a tough matchup for us. They had a few future NBA players and professionals on their team. Just kind of remember that game being kind of a grudge match, back and forth. Obviously, final score here, 60-69. So
yep.
Probably a few possessions short. I don't recall us playing great basketball, but again, that was just a tough matchup. And heck, when you're in the SEC and on the road, it's a tough opponent
yep.
any day of the week.
So the interest game is Southern Miss. That was a rock fight, 59-51.
Yeah, so I fractured my foot in that Tennessee game, and I think Evan Wessel had broke his pinky maybe just before the Air Force game. Might be needed correction on that.
No, I think you're right. Yep.
Going into that Southern Miss game, it's December 22nd, and our next game's not till the 30th, so everybody's kind of looking forward to Christmas break. And you could definitely tell the players and the fans were looking forward to Christmas break. Man, we were turning the ball over left and right. I'm not sure without looking at the box score here, but I'm pretty sure we were down a decent amount at half. Yeah, down 28-17. Recall that like it was yesterday. That was a fun locker room to be in. But, man, Clay Anthony, I remember Nick Wiggins and him playing pretty well in that second half and snuck away with a win. And I remember driving to my uncle's in Kansas City after the game and him calling me and said, "Man, you guys about ruined my Christmas." And I said, "Yeah, you ain't the only one."
So your injury and Evan's injury, and that was the first bit of adversity in that particular season. Did you personally, your mind go to bad places? You had such a good season going individually and as a team, 8-0 to start, and now you got a stress fracture in your foot, and there's no real timeline as far as the fans are concerned. When's Ron Baker coming back? What were you thinking?
Yeah, so I recall December 14th, it looks like, showing up to Coke Arena, foot's throbbing like crazy. X-rays, MRIs, have a stress reaction in your navicular. For those that don't know where that is, it's basically where your foot meets your ankle. So pretty painful. And again, I mentioned Evan was out, and he was a starter at the time. So there goes one starter. I'm two starter coming to the bench. For me personally, obviously devastating. I spent the entire previous year redshirting and watching. Obviously learning a ton, but to be 9 games in, I really felt like I was gaining some confidence each and every game and played decent against Tennessee, just obviously got hurt. So the confidence really took a spin, but I mentioned earlier how deep this team was, and if you look back at our schedule, we ended up winning out in the non-conference just because we had a deep bench, which we were grateful for.
Talking to Ron Baker, talking the 2012-2013 Wichita State team that eventually made it to the Final Four. So you get into Missouri Valley Conference play, you start off 4-0, and the defense is really has been a calling card for Greg Marshall's teams pretty much from the time that he got there. You guys hold Northern Iowa to 41 points. You win at Drake, at Bradley, only give up 63 to those two guys. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. First of all, Creighton's really good. And the Charles Koch Arena game against Creighton on January the 19th, it was Wichita State just out of the rankings and Creighton number 12. What do you remember about that Creighton team that year?
Oh, I think there's one name we could all remember, and Doug McDermott, my teammate up in New York. I think still to this day one of the toughest matchups in college basketball between him and Zach Edey, maybe, as far as on the block. It was honestly fun to see him and Carl match up together. Not until we went to their place and he gave Carl 41. That was kind of humbling. But if you look at this non-conference schedule, I think one of the things I recall the most is Coach Marshall's mindset going into conference play. He's like, guys, this is a different season. Like, you don't know. Literally, our team does not know, other than Dimitrik knows what MVC basketball is about, the scouting, and honestly the talent in the conference was pretty solid across the board. And I kind of just remember the prep for these games, how in depth it was. Our scouting reports were, an hour long, 30 to 40 minute clips of, their plays, and 10 to 15 clips of each player. Like, just the attention to detail that was required by our coaches before these games was kind of fascinating. And coach was big on that. And obviously we started off really well. And you mentioned, I don't know what the term was, but I'll go and tell you, there was some dark times as we get to, I think Carl maybe broke his hand before Christmas break. So now, circling back to that, before conference play, we're going in, Evan, myself, Carl, both injured. And, man, you could tell, like, going into that next game when all three of us were out, I can't remember who we were playing, but we walk out of the tunnel, and I feel like Charles Cocarena gave us one of those, man, we're really sad you're hurt,
courtesy
applause.
claps.
Yeah, and I could just feel the energy, like, dang, everybody's sad that we're hurt, but here we are. And again, we still kind of fought pretty well. I do recall losing to Evansville on a tough one. But I think if you look down this list, where it really went dark as a 3-game skid here at the end of January and beginning of February. Thank goodness the conference was competitive. Our RPI was good enough to get at large, but losing 3 in the Valley can be detrimental to an at large situation. And I think one of the memories I recall is after that 3-game skid, Marshall really dialing in on the guys to dig in and grind this out. He always said the cavalry was coming, and he referred to myself and Carl coming back. And to this day, I think one of the loudest, not the loudest, but one of the loudest applause February 17th was Carl Hall's return against Illinois State. I recall him checking in right before the first media timeout, and there was not a butt in any seat. Everybody was standing, clapping, and the cavalry had arrived.
So we'll get to Arch Madness here in a second. Some people won't remember, or maybe won't remember it quite this way. 12-6 in the Missouri Valley Conference, and going into the Missouri Valley Conference tournament won't lead people on too much before we take a break. But when was it determined that you'd make your return, and when did you feel like, all right, this is going to be the target date?
Yeah, so after that injury in December, we kind of mathed out a progression with our athletic trainer, Todd Fagan, and our Ascension Via Christi doctor, Andrew Porter. Recommended 6 weeks non-weight bearing, so that's in a boot, crutches, and then a 6-week progression. Well, it just so happened that 6 weeks on top of another 6 weeks put me at the Monday after Arch Madness. So kind of poor timing, and I remember getting off crutches and was progressing pretty well. Thankfully, I was young and pretty healthy at the time, and Todd Fagan did a great job rehabbing me. And Chris Jans brought up the question, like, hey, Todd, 6 weeks is 6 weeks, but what's it look like if we can do 5? That'll get Ron to the Monday before Arch Madness. And then from that conversation on, that was kind of the game plan. And it's kind of weird running on a left foot that hadn't been used for about 10 weeks, but we progressed well, and a lot of credit to Todd and Dr. Porter.
Talking with Ron Baker here in studio. We'll get into the NCAA tournament when we come back. In studio with Ron Baker talking about the Final Four run of Wichita State. More Shocker talk when we come back. Come back. It's 12:22. We continue our Shocker talk and our walk down memory lane. Ron Baker is in studio. We're talking about that magical 2012-2013 season. We're at the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. It's been 21 games since Ron played with that stress fracture in his foot. He came off the bench in each of the 3 games at Arch Madness. Wichita State took care of Missouri State, Illinois State, and then ran into Creighton in the championship game, losing 68-65. So the Blue Jays continued to be the Shockers' nemesis that year. Take us back. After 3 games, Ron coming back and coming off the bench, how did it feel? Did you feel like, all right, we knock on wood, get in the NCAA tournament, I'll be fine for that?
Yeah, I think my body felt like I kicked the training wheels off my bike and could finally pedal with freedom. Still kind of felt raw, but like I said earlier, did a great job of those 5 weeks kind of getting back into things. But, man, I had never experienced Arch Madness as a player, and we didn't make the conference championship very often in my years here, and this year actually did. Do recall I mentioned Carl, the Cavalry's coming, Carl Hall's come back, and how the fans gave him this awesome standing ovation. Coach Marshall checked me into this Missouri State game, and I'm like, heck yeah, this is going to be sweet, man. Our fans are going to applaud like crazy. TV timeout. Back to the bench I went. That was my first memory, but played really well and was really confident. I'd have to look at the box score, but I think I shot it pretty well. Coming off the bench and kind of got the gears going and the confidence back for sure.
Okay, so you lose to Creighton, 68-65. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier in the first segment about your RPI was good enough and your non-con was good enough. Were you guys sweating at all? Like, so Selection Sunday, how was that?
Yeah, definitely sweating. I mentioned the 3-game skid, and I think I recall at the time, like, guys, we got to win out. That was discussed, and obviously we knew Creighton was going to be a tough matchup, but losing that one at home against Evansville, second to last game, I think that was the game that really put us in the hot seat, like first 4 in, first 4 out. I don't even know if that was a thing then, but definitely on the hot seat going into that Sunday of Selection Sunday.
All right, let's get into the good stuff. You're a 9 seed. You guys get sent to Salt Lake. And, of course, if you're a 9 seed, that means if you win, you probably get a number 1. But what do you recall about your matchup going into the Pittsburgh game? Scouting report, players you played against, things like what was the mindset going into the pit of the 8-9 game?
First and foremost, I remember our name getting selected, and first thing I thought of was like, all right, we're playing Pittsburgh. I didn't look at anybody else in the bracket, any other region. I was just so set on Pittsburgh, and I think that was something that Coach Marshall and Coach Jans instilled in myself and probably a few others, is just that sharp focus on who's up next. Pittsburgh obviously presented a pretty big challenge for maybe not myself, but for Carl Hall, in that they had Steven Adams, future lottery pick, still in the NBA, 7 foot, tough matchup. I think they had another 6'10" guy. Obviously the first thing you think of is matchups in March Madness, and we knew it was going to be a tough one. And I think one thing that spearheaded this whole thing was Malcolm Armstead. You mentioned tough matchups. He was definitely one of them, especially in this tournament.
What about that Trey Woodall matchup with Tikel Cotton? I think we need to dredge that back up a little bit, because Tikel Cotton, of course, when he was here and immediately after he left, well, everybody remembered his lockdown defense. He holds Trey Woodall to 1 for 12 from the floor with 5 turnovers. What was it like going against him in practice? Do you ever get the opportunity to do that, or the misfortune, I guess? Yeah,
it was definitely misfortune. One of the coolest, I think, stories of that year is, man, Tikel was struggling offensively, middle of conference play, and finally started, getting some confidence in his scoring ability, and we knew he could defend. And going into that tournament, any guard that we matched up against, Tikel was, number 1 defender going out there. And Trey Woodall, I'm not certain, but I believe he was all Big East or whatever conference they were in, first team or second team. He's definitely in the scouting report. You mentioned 2 points, 1 for 12 from the field. That is a lot of credit to Tikel Cotton. And I think my favorite highlight is the steal at midcourt and kind of the hammer down dunk to seal the deal in that game.
73-55 was the final. So you guys get to 27-8. Armstead had 22 points in that game. And of course, Tikel Cotton with his lockdown defense on Woodall. But now you get big bad Gonzaga. Talk us through the before we get to the nuts and bolts of the game. What was the scout? What was the theme? What were the coaches trying to stress to you guys? And how closely did you pay attention to that? Oh my God, we're playing the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, we obviously knew Gonzaga was going to be the next opponent. But prior or after our game against Pitt, I think it was after, they played Southern, and Southern hung with them the first half, maybe even had the lead in the second half. So we've seen some vulnerability, if you will. But on film, oh my goodness, talk about a matchup nightmare. And Kelly Olynyk, missing another guy's name here, if I could look him up, Ryan something. Obviously good guard play from Pangos, and then Gary Bell Jr. was kind of a tough matchup for most guys in his league, and we held him to 0 points. But I just remember watching film, arguably the best offense in the nation at the time. And our defense was something we hung our hat on, and the two worlds collided. And to be honest, in that second half, like, we just weren't getting anywhere with them. They were kind of keeping that 5 to 8 point cushion, and then all hell fire broke loose.
That was an unbelievable. I don't know if I've ever seen it before or since, and I don't know the exact time span, but you guys didn't miss in like 8 or 10 consecutive trips down the floor.
I think a great comparison, those last 7 minutes of that game would be compared to probably a 7 and 10 minute stretch of the Kentucky-Wichita State game the next year. And it wasn't like Gonzaga wasn't scoring either. I think we were just hitting a couple threes there, getting a couple twos, and I mean, just, yeah, like you said, unbelievable to see that in a college basketball game. And then not to mention, I think the highlight for me was, wet behind the ears, Fred VanVleet hitting a 3-point shot in front of our bench, kind of to seal the deal.
And let's not forget either that you guys were 2 for 20 from 3-point range against Pitt, and you make 14 of them against Gonzaga. I'm sure Mark Few's going, where did this come from?
Right. Yeah, we obviously held our hat on defense. We scored a lot of points off our defense in that Pitt game. And, I mean, shoot, what was the final score of that? I think we scored close to the 70s. Again, 2 for 20 was kind of unheard of. We had some decent 3-point shooting throughout that year, but definitely nothing like the last 7 minutes of this Gonzaga game. But if you look back, they're all really good toe-the-line threes and rhythm. Malcolm, Fred, Tikel, everybody was kind of creating for one another, and it was just good defense but better offense at that moment.
Ron Baker joining us in studio. He had 16. Clay Anthony Early had 16 in that game. And Ron had 4 assists also to lead Wichita State 76-70. Can you take us through and keep it safe for radio, the locker room after you beat Gonzaga and you're moving on?
Man, obviously a tremendous party in the locker room. Everybody's on cloud 9. Sweet 16 hasn't been done since 06. I remember my interview at midcourt with CBS. Remember going in the stands and everybody's hugging one another, tears of joy, hugging family members. The last thing I remember is taking our bus. I'm getting chills talking about it, taking our bus to the hotel after the game, and everybody's, energy's through the roof. And Coach Marshall comes back there and, tells us the schedule for the next day, trip itinerary, so on and so forth. And he's looking us dead in the eye and he goes, "Guys, we can win this MFR." And I think it hit everybody in the core like, whoa, we got 4 more, and it's a legit chance at winning 4 more too.
It's funny, I was going to ask you, how did you bounce back after beating the number 1 overall seed without having a basketball hangover? But I guess there's the answer, right?
Yeah, that, and obviously LaSalle coming out of the other side of the bracket was a good matchup for us. They weren't very deep. To be honest, a lot of us were hoping for Marshall Henderson and or K-State to come out of that side. But there was definitely no, we just beat the number 1 team, so we get to act like it. We knew we came in as a 9 seed and weren't the favorites, and we kind of just had that chip on our shoulder the rest of the way. So
you go out to Los Angeles, and you do have the 13 seed in LaSalle, and you get out to a 14-2 lead to start the game. And I know that doesn't make the entire 40 minutes, but when you get that kind of a cushion, that kind of put to rest any of there's no overlooking anybody in this tournament.
LaSalle was a really good team that year. I believe they won the A10 or were an at-large out of the A10. Obviously, everybody in our 9-man rotation played well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it to the Final Four. But solid memory from this game. I believe they had a big man, pretty poor with names, but I believe he was a all A-10 player and matched up with Carl. And Carl was just dominant this game. He ran the floor well, 16 and 8 in 27 minutes, it looks like. And I just recall we had a lot of transition sets, if you will, that we ran, and most of them were kind of like a high-low action to him. And Carl, being the athlete he was pretty dominant in this game, and we shot it pretty well from deep this game as well. But yeah, it was a good matchup for us. We didn't overlook them, and they just weren't very deep, and I feel like our guards were more dominant than them.
So you get Ohio State next, and it's a 2 versus 9 matchup in this one. And I know watching it, it felt like, especially at the end for a little bit different reason, it felt like the Gonzaga game. It was a heavyweight matchup. Mm-hmm. You knew it would come down to the end. But you guys tried not to let it come down to the end. You had a 20-point lead in the second half, 53-33. And then they did kind of, Ron, what you guys did to Gonzaga. Just made a bunch of shots in a row, and it got tight in a hurry.
Yeah, so Ohio State and I believe Arizona played right before or after we played LaSalle. And here I am. I'm a Western Kansas kid, wet behind the ears, and I'm watching a bunch of trees on this court from what it looks like from Arizona and Ohio State bash against each other. I'd never seen these type of athletes perform in front of my eyes, so it was very eye-opening. And obviously Ohio State won, and we matched up with them. Swear Aaron Kraft was in college longer than I was. But playing against him was, pretty surreal. You'd always seen him perform well in March. And then Deshaun Thomas, just a nightmare for anybody involved. He gave Carl 23 points, but he was held 0 for 6 from 3. One of the probably most athletic teams we had played all season.
And how about the three that Takale Cotton hit? They trimmed that thing all the way down to 3 points. And you talked about Cotton at different points of the season struggling offensively. He hits a 3 to kind of let you guys exhale a little bit.
Yeah, I think that got us to, 5 or 6 point lead. Again, toe the line 3. I can't recall if it was off offensive rebound or not, but we hit some obviously some big shots down the stretch. I believe Fred, Malcolm, Takale, and I believe Dimitrik had some great late minutes in that game, and we were able to sneak away with a victory.
So what was the party like in the locker room after that? Now you're going to the Final Four.
Yeah.
You didn't just beat the number 1 team. You're going to the Final Four.
Yeah, that was pretty surreal. Obviously, it's awesome making the Final Four, but even better when you kind of least expect it, to be honest. You're confident in yourself, but the odds are against you, and the percentages say that you're not going to make it there. So we had a good time in the locker room. On top of that, we were in the Staples Center, so a pretty sweet memory for all of those involved. And I recall FaceTime and Marcus Mader, our track roommate at WSU, and the track team was on a bus on the way home from I don't know where, but we were FaceTiming the whole track team, and I remember celebrating. And Cloud Nine's not the term because it was something you all dream about getting to, but when you get there, it's impossible to explain until you do it.
Leading up to the Final Four, that week of or whatever, what were the media obligations and the distractions, and what did Greg tell you guys to try to keep you focused on actually playing a basketball game?
I was actually going to bring this up. So point guard, again, tough with names. I think his last name was Rodriguez, but he was on the team that made it to the Final Four a couple years prior, and Jans was just kind of picking his brain on what our guys should expect. And something he said, it was just like, man, media is great and all, but just don't get lost on why you're there. Like, everybody's chasing, especially our team, everybody's chasing a great story, individual story, team story. Don't get caught up in all that hoopla. It's awesome stuff. Let everybody do the talking for you, but know why you're there. And I felt like our coaches did a great job of that. I'd never understood what media was until we went to the Final Four. I think media Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I seriously think we got there Tuesday and practiced. And every day media in the locker room. We went to a few Final Four party zones, and I did not understand how crazy, that situation was.
Talking to Ron Baker, talking the 2012-13 Shocker team in the run to the Final Four. So now that you're in the Final Four and you're at the Georgia Dome, of all places, now shooting basketballs in NBA arenas, how that's maybe a little different than shooting in gymnasiums, which a handful of the Valley teams have, very simply put, gyms. Yeah. What was it like trying to shoot a basketball in the Georgia Dome?
Yeah, everybody always talks about the depth perception. It's definitely a thing. I mean, you're in a football stadium, right? Your court's on the 50-yard line stretching to, I don't know, it's only 30 yards long, so you're going from 35 to 35, and that goal's a ways away from the wall, if you will.
Yeah.
Luckily, like I said, we got there Tuesday. We practiced on the court for, I think, 3 days, and kind of just one of those things, foreign nature, and you just muscle memory, you get used to it. But, yeah, obviously something challenging, no doubt about it.
You guys had, as we all know, a second-half lead against Louisville, led by Rick Pitino at the time. You end up losing by 4. Kind of a controversial call, no call at at a critical juncture of that game. What, besides the disappointment, were your main takeaways, your memories from that Louisville loss?
Yeah, obviously the jump ball call was something we'll always remember about, but I think we're up 12 with, 10 minutes to go and put ourselves in a great position. And just like we did to other teams late in games, they hit some shots and we couldn't get the ball in the hoop late. And if anybody knows sports, that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. I do recall the media after the game kind of trying to trip me up on, hey, what'd you think about that jump call? I'm like, well, yeah, no shit, man. What do you think I thought about it? But I remember telling him, I just wish, the players on the court had a chance to determine the game. Obviously, that jump ball was pretty detrimental at the time and place. But, again, up 12, should have found a way to win that game. But only 4 teams made it that far that year, and we were one of them.
And Louisville actually had to vacate the national championship after the fact. So you guys were close to being the national champions.
Yeah, we're basically, shareholders of that natty title, if we have anything to say about it.
All right, we'll take our final break with Ron. We'll wrap it up with him. We'll mix in the Twitter question. We'll ask him about Shocker Hoops today, NIL, how much money would he make back then, and maybe a couple of his fondest memories at Wichita State. We'll continue and wrap up the conversation, 2012-2013 run to the Final Four, with Shocker legend Ron Baker when we come back. Trip down memory lane from 12 or 13 years ago continues, and we'll wrap it up. We'll keep Ron here all day. Ron Baker is with us. He took us through that run to the Final Four. And so as we put a bow on that season, just when you had a chance to get back to Wichita, Ron, and kind of let it all sink in that you'd just gone to the Final Four and you're this close from making it to the national championship game, just some of the thoughts and conversations that you had with your teammates when you got back?
Thoughts were obviously devastation. Would come obviously so close to winning the Mecca of basketball. But also, in the back of our mind, obviously we lost some key seniors that year, and, they were tremendous on that team. But we also knew we weren't going to hide this portion of it, but we knew we were going to be really, really, really good the next few years. But, man, I tell you, going through those next 3 seasons, you truly understand how hard it is to make it to the Final Four, regardless if you're the number 2 team in the country or on a really nice run in the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's a challenge each and every year to make it that far. So, obviously proud as heck of that team, that coaching staff. Proud to be a part of something that'll live on forever. 3
players that eventually went to the NBA, including Ron, played on that team. I won't ask you to compare or maybe give favoritism to one year or another, but 35-0 is pretty special, and I can't imagine anybody would expect that sort of a follow-up to a Final Four year, huh?
Yeah, I think going into that season, I think we're preseason top 20 in the country, and looking at the schedule, we felt pretty confident in the team. We brought in Darius Carter, I recall, All-American junior college power forward, and obviously returned majority of our backcourt minutes other than Malcolm. And we knew Fred was going to improve and be a solid head of the snake for us. But yeah, 35-0, we didn't expect it. We didn't, really, I don't think any team expects to go 35-0. But once we made it through non-conference that year, playing some very, very good teams, we knew the non-conference schedule was probably going to be a lot tougher than our conference schedule at the time, and, made a run and got it done.
So maybe if you could whittle it down to one or two, your fondest memory at Wichita State, not just from those years, but all together.
Yeah, I got two for you. Obviously, beating Ohio State, I believe it was my birthday. My mom and dad got to make their way onto the court, and it's kind of just a full circle life moment for us three. Your parents are obviously, if you're fortunate enough to be role models for you, they sacrificed a ton growing up for my brother Sloan and Audrey and I. And life kind of just went full circle. You dreamed about playing college basketball, and you made it to the Final Four. And us three, there's a picture, I think, of us three hugging each other on that court, and that's probably the top memory. And the second memory, many could probably guess, is playing your in-state childhood, truth be told, favorite team, Kansas. When I mentioned earlier, when the bracket comes out, you usually don't look at that next opponent, but Ron Baker was sure as hell looking at the next opponent when that one came out.
That's good.
But yeah, and honestly, it was great. I was fortunate enough to be in Omaha. I got a lot of family in the Topeka area. My mom's the youngest of 10, so a lot of her family got to drive up there and experience something that does not happen very often. So that win I would put as number two is one of my memories.
How closely are you related to the program today? How close do you follow Wichita State basketball?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't go to a ton of games. I mainly score check. To be honest, I don't follow a ton. I'm working with Ascension Via Christi now, and they're our sport medicine partner. I mentioned Andrew Porter. He's our team medical physician, and I work alongside them and a gal by the name of Taylor Spiker, who's in charge of Shocker Health and Performance. So I'm in the know with that type of stuff. I see Kevin Saul obviously quite a bit, and truth be told, I'm pretty excited about where he's pushing our programs in our university right now.
Speaking of, can you imagine being 19 or 20 and being a millionaire like some of these kids are, or a lot of these kids are nowadays?
Yeah, I obviously get that question here and there. Can you imagine how much Clee and Fred and Ron would have made in NIL? And I'm like, yeah, Fred also would have potentially transferred to Illinois, and
right.
Clee might have ended up at St. John, and who knows about me. Obviously, strange times we're in, but it is reality. And, good for those kids. I hope they got some solid role models around them to help navigate them the correct way, and kind of just see how this portal and NIL thing shakes out.
Speaking of NIL, not long ago, Kevin Saul sent out a letter to fans, donors, etc., and kind of gave a State of the Union on how the NIL and revenue share sources to support men's basketball have grown by some 500%, but more support and more money is needed. It is the job of the athletic director to say such things, and especially without football, and especially with some, I don't know if indecision is the right word, but with some unpredictability when it comes to revenue sharing and things like that, and how much money it's going to take to consistently field a winning program year after year after year. Do you think it's sustainable at Wichita State, and how difficult a job does Kevin Saul have right about now?
Oh, I definitely think it's sustainable. I think we have the best fan base, arguably, in the country. I think they might just be a little caught off guard of, what is NIL? How does it work? Does my NIL money that I give the university, does it have a return on investment? Like, these guys are transferring each and every year. How does it make sense for me to give money to Shocker Athletics when, guys are leaving left and right from the portal? But I think in Kevin's letter, what he's trying to get across to fans is, if you look across, we'll just use the in-state tournament, for example. I didn't see a single mid-major make a Sweet 16 run, and I'd bet you if you put those 16 teams together and averaged out their collective, I imagine it's probably pretty high. And I just think Kevin's being transparent and real with our fans. I think we're number 2, if I'm not misspeaking, in the conference for NIL funds, which, that's great. Would you want Kevin to come out and say, that's where we want to be, or do you want him to be proactive and say, hey, we need additional million because, we want our teams to be competing in March? I think that's the expectation here. At least for me, I'd love to see us be one, win. That's the first thing. 2, be a competitive team in the American, reach that at large potential. And then obviously 3 would be make the tournament. And I think what Kevin's trying to get across in that letter is, if those are the expectations, like, this is where we need to be. And he's, I think, in my opinion, been very proactive, like I mentioned, and transparent with our fan bases. I just hope, people buy in and encourage and try and understand better how this NIL works.
Hard to put into words how difficult it would be to coach in this day and age, regardless of whether you're at a Power 4 or not, right? It's like, I don't want to compare it completely to junior college, but you got to re-recruit year after year after year.
Yeah, it's become essentially franchise basketball without guarantee. These kids got guaranteed money if they stay for a full year, and then they have a chance to leave. I'm sure it's challenging. A lot of coaches are probably struggling with it and trying to figure out what's the right balance. If I got $1 million in my budget, am I paying a guy $250,000? Am I going to pay 10 guys $100,000? Yeah. It's just another element for these coaches. And, unfortunately, there's going to be some good coaches that are probably going to walk away from this. But, this is the day and age of sports, man. You got to, just accept it. And I think our fan base can and hopefully will. And I'd see a bright future for, not only basketball. Obviously, there's other sports up there that have been very, very competitive in our past. And I'll just bluntly say it, I think with Kevin Saul's leadership, we're going in the right direction.
Very well put. Your NBA career, before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about that. Some of the more memorable guys that you played with, against, and maybe moments when you were in the NBA.
You just want memories, or?
Yeah, whatever, yeah. Off the top of your head.
It's very humbling for a Western Kansas kid that lives in Wichita for 5 years and then just jumps into the Mecca of New York City. Get off the subway train and you look around and you can't see the sun. My grandpa always taught me my directions by where the sun was at. So it was very overwhelming at first, but shoot, guys, just like anything, you kind of get used to your surroundings and the lifestyle. And I made New York home for a little over 3 years, and it was really great to me. Really enjoyed the city once I got comfortable. Basketball-wise, man, it was challenging. I'll just be very honest. We had some up and down seasons there. I probably lost more games in that 3-year stretch than I did my entire life. So, but not a lot of people make it that far in their career. I got to play with some Hall of Famers. I seen Carmelo just got inducted, I think, this week. Yeah. Derrick Rose just got his jersey retired in Chicago. I wouldn't be surprised if Joakim Noah's on his way there as well. And then probably one of my favorite teammates is Brandon Jennings, my rookie year. So pretty cool for a Western Kansas kid like myself to make it there, survive, and tell the tale.
A couple text questions before we let you go. How many of the coaches do you still visit with and stay in touch with from Wichita State?
Man, I just touched base with Coach Heyer a couple weeks ago. He's got a really solid player on his team he wanted me to reach out to and give some advice prior to the Junior College National Championship. And I'm sorry I forget the name of the school, but they ended up winning that son of a gun.
It was Trinity Valley, isn't it?
Yeah, sure did. But other than that, man, I know that a lot of those coaches are busy. One thing that keeps us in touch is social media here and there. KT Turner down at UTSA or TSA, I'm not certain he'll randomly FaceTime me when he's talking to a recruit and in his office. Yeah, I chit chat with a few of them, but not in the basketball realm anymore. So there's not a lot of opportunity for me to meet up with them and see them.
Let you vote on the Twitter question, and we'll mix this in before we get to hour number 2. Best freshman in college hoops ever. Who you got? Michael Beasley, Kevin Durant, Cooper Flagg, Carmelo Anthony.
I will say Cooper Flagg is making a strong case this year. I'm sure he'll be Naismith Player of the Year, but I might be biased to NBA teammate of mine and a Kansas legend in himself, but I'm going with Michael Beasley on that one. Probably one of the most dominant Big 12 freshmen the conference, maybe the nation's ever seen. So that would be my pick.
Ron, really appreciate the time and your candor. You can tell it came through in this little set down and the memories that you shared with Shocker basketball fans. I'm sure they appreciate it, and I certainly do too. Thank you for coming by. Have a great weekend, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's always good to reminisce, especially with you. Obviously, you being a Shocker alum, maybe sometime we can reminisce about your baseball days. Well, maybe so. Yeah. In the summer when it's a little slow, the door will always be open, man. All right? Hour number 2 is straight ahead.